My name's Kirsty. Back in April, I found out I was pregnant. When I first found out, I was quite happy about it, shocked but happy. Um, so I decided that I wouldn't tell the person who I was involved with that I was pregnant, because I knew how he felt about children. For about a week, I kept the pregnancy a secret to myself. I didn't tell anybody. I then decided that it was wrong to keep a secret like that from somebody else that was involved with it, immediately involved. So I told him, had a message saying that it was a shock for him, he couldn't talk about it. So I left him alone for a while and I couldn't get in touch with him at all. Eventually, he did get back to me, telling me all the reasons why I shouldn't keep it, one of them being take into consideration our age and the fact that we could have a Down syndrome child, which wouldn't have mattered to me. I would have loved it unconditionally anyway. So we went through a few weeks of him telling me all the reasons why I shouldn't keep my baby. Various sort of threats, borderline blackmails to not keep the child. To eventually where I had to come to the decision where I had to get rid of my baby. I finally managed to get up the courage to ring the clinic to arrange going for an abortion. It was a very brief conversation, just more of a case of where they were going to send the medication to. No sort of, I did tell them obviously how far gone I was. I was coming up quite close to 10 weeks. And because it was over the Easter holiday, there was a delay in like sending out the parcel. So I was concerned about obviously that I was going to be late. I did tell them that one of my biggest concerns was I'd had the same procedure in hospital before when I was quite young, and it ended up me going back in for another abortion procedure because it hadn't worked. So I was really scared that that was going to happen, where I was going to end up just in hospital anyway. But they said no, it has to be done this way because of lockdown and COVID. You need to do it at home. So they just got my address off me. I don't remember them asking me for my NHS number, and they said, right, it should be with you within 3 to 4 days. But again, bearing in mind that there was a bank holiday, so it might be a little bit late. So I finally got the parcel come to me, and all I had in there was just instructions, and it was what they'd run for on the phone as well, just instructions on how to take it. And I did look at the box for a couple of days thinking I couldn't do this, but I couldn't speak to anybody. Like, there was nobody that I could phone just to sort of get some sort of perspective. During the phone consultation, I wasn't offered any sort of pre-appointments such as a scan to see how far gone I was and whether this procedure would be safe. I would have liked the scan because I think it would have helped sort of look at things in a different way. I also wasn't offered any sort of other appointments to go through any like procedures or risk factors of it. There were some complications after the procedure. But yeah, it was all very brief and just quick, like they just wanted to get it out the way with. So I took the first part of the abortion medication on a Saturday night. I don't remember the date because it's something that I try and blur out now. I felt horrible taking it because as soon as I took the first pill, I didn't want to. I just wanted it. But as a matter of fact, a couple of hours later, I was sick because my morning sickness had been really bad throughout my pregnancy. So that had come back up. But then I thought, if I don't continue with it, I could lead to more complications. Then I took the final part of the medication on a Monday. I took it as it was advised to take it. They send you out some painkillers with it, but they were painkillers that made me really ill. So I just remember having to try and sleep through the entire thing, a really light sleep. I had really bad cramps as I was drifting off into sleep. Then when I woke up, I actually didn't feel anything, so I didn't think it had worked. And I just remember lifting up my blanket and it being like a scene out of a horror movie. It was obviously really awkward because I was living at home with my mum and dad at the time, who didn't have any acknowledgement of this. So I had to just lie in my room for a few hours until my parents had gone out, so I could get myself cleaned up. And as soon as I heard that they were going out, as difficult as it was because my cramps were really bad, I had to try and get myself out of bed. And I knew that I was going to make a mess straight away. And I just remember getting up, and as I got up I could feel a drip of blood coming down my legs. And then I looked down and I'd made a mess on the carpet. And to this day I've still got a stain on the carpet, which is all I've got left of my baby now. Then I rushed into the shower and I just remember washing the blood of my baby down the shower. After I'd got out of the shower, I changed out of the pyjamas that I was in and I just put them into a bin bag and hid them in a cupboard where I knew my mum wouldn't, or anyone would have gone into. I did since try washing them, but the stains are still there, but I think they're there for a reason because that's all I've got left of my baby now. After that, it's just been a bit of a downhill struggle, coming to terms with what I've done and having to keep it from everybody, because that's how I'm made to feel like I needed to keep it from everybody. So I've sort of lived with this by myself and had to work my way through it. Eventually I did tell my mum in September, months after the abortion. Obviously my mum, she's a strong character, my mum is, so she didn't want to get worked up because she knew it would upset me, but I could hear in her voice that she was more upset that I couldn't tell her about it and that I'd kept it from her and that I'd gone through that on my own. I told her and we had a long conversation and she just wanted me to get the help that she knew I needed, which led me to Rachel's Vineyard. And I'm grateful that I have gone through what I've been through now, because I was at a point where I didn't want to wake up anymore, because I've lost a part of me. I've not just lost my baby, I've lost a part of me, but I've said before, I hope that part of me is with my baby, because she needs me. So after the procedure was complete, you get a test in the kit to make sure that it's worked, to take 2 weeks after the procedure. I took the test 2 weeks afterwards and it came back positive. And obviously, a bit of wishful thinking, I was praying that it hadn't worked. I rang the clinic to obviously tell them that it came back positive, thinking that they might actually see me this time. And again, it was just a case of, no, we'll just send you another test out to take in another week. Took a second test and it came back positive again. And finally they said, and this was the first time that I'd seen somebody face to face, finally they said, you need to come in to obviously make sure that the procedure has worked and you haven't got any pregnancy tissue left in you. I went to the first appointment, but I got sent away because my temperature was slightly over what it should have been, and because obviously with COVID they couldn't risk me going in, so I came out completely confused and lost and just broke down in the middle of Birmingham. So again, it was another week or so of like the unknown, what was happening. Then finally, another week later, I went back to the clinic and they did another test, and that's the first time I actually did have a scan, when they checked to make sure I'd got no pregnancy tissue in me, and it all came back negative. If I could go back, which I often wish I could every day, I wish I either had somebody perhaps at the clinic I could have spoke to prior having the medication sent out to me. I don't know why I call it medication, because it's not medication that makes you feel better. Had somebody to spoke to, or even just had the me that I am now speak to me back then and say not to do it. And it's not just because of like the aftermath now with like the heartache. It's obviously dawned on me that it was a dangerous procedure, and I was left really heavily bleeding for months afterwards. It's difficult to even just go out for a walk for ages because I couldn't risk making like a mess of myself, and obviously it was something that I couldn't have hid from my mum much longer. So I'd go back and tell myself to either not do it or find somebody to speak to before making that decision, having some sort of like pre-counselling before coming to that decision. If I'd been given the option to speak to somebody such as like a counsellor before coming to like the decision of having an abortion, my decision wouldn't have been what I made back then. I'd have had my baby with me now, because she was due on the 10th of December, and my Christmas would have been everything that I'd hoped it would have been when I first found out that I was pregnant, and all the plans that I'd made. Looking back, I wish one person on the one phone call that I had could have just, I don't know, been a little bit more compassionate and just said, you know, are you sure you want to go through this? My voice was like it is now. When I spoke to them, it was shaky. And I think anybody could have told that. And it wasn't even that I wasn't sure, it was that I didn't want to do it. But as I said, I was in a very manipulative and controlling relationship. So I thought I only had one choice, but I didn't have one choice. And even if there wasn't going to be a father figure around, I was going to have a massive amount of support. So it would just be nice if somebody at the clinic, or everybody at the clinic, could just ensure that the patient wants to do this. The at-home abortion is being made to make you think that you're doing it in the comfort of your own home without, you know, having to travel to a clinic or a hospital. But then you've got the memory of the loss of your child in your own home forever. So now, to me, my home's not my home, my happy, safe place. It's the place where it took away my child. So I can never sort of think of my home, that happy, safe place that it's always been. I'm hoping that my interview today, it stops people from losing it stops people from losing their Christine, like I've lost my Christy. Because like I said, if I could go back, my decision would be completely different. And I would never want my worst enemy to feel the way I'm feeling now. Because it's the worst feeling in the world. So I just don't, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. So I'm hoping that this message helps everybody that thinks that there's only one choice, because there isn't.